Welcome to more Gran Turismo Sports Specialtatin. Today we're featuring the FIA Nations Cup kart race around the small Kyoto. And every other kart race that I've done has been pretty cotton picking fun, pretty cotton picking action packed, and actually pretty cotton skilled drivers too. They kept the karts just barely stable, but stable enough to keep the racing close. And there are little bumps and taps along the way because karts are hard to drive, but everybody was pretty cotton picking clean. But, well, now there's the update 1.14 penalty system, and y'all know my thoughts on that. So I'll go ahead and say this out front. This will be a specialtatin of how the race actually happened, but I will do a format, which I'm going to keep a secret, in a way that makes this race be happy. AKA, without penalties. I ain't going to say what I'm going to do for that, but, well, because I'm not really caring about the driver rating and sportsmanship rating anymore, but penalties don't care if I don't care, the penalties will happen either way. This might be a format that stays in the future depending on how it ends up working out. I'm going to do one race how it is, like how I usually do specialtatin, and then one version of the race in a happy way, which just ignores penalties to the best way possible. So anyway, I'll go ahead and get into this, because this is the normal way of doing it. To start off, I'm in 4th. There's about 5 of the top 10 fastest in the region in this race. I think I was also 4th in the region, so but there's only about half of the fastest, so But honestly, even the fastest in the region started in 2nd. For some reason, I think the first place driver just didn't do practice have a hunch. But, I mean, really no big deal. Draft is so OP in karts. Pretty much all about the top 5 or so was able to get it in a good enough draft line to run about 4/10 of a second faster on average. Oh, for Jiminy Cricket's sakes. I'm already getting rudely interrupted by penalties. This is going to go great, isn't it? But anyway, I'll continue from before I was rudely interrupted. About all the top 5 or so ran 4/10 of a second-ish faster than their qualifying times because draft is overpowered. Qualifying in the sense of single kart qualifying, like before the actual meetup of all the drivers. Once all the drivers met up, I mean, nobody got in a great formation because nothing was really planned, where we generally don't race with each other all the time. Which in a way makes it fun, but in a way it just makes it to where qualifying doesn't show all that much. But again, I'll give credit where credit is due, as I've done in races before. First is cotton picking fast. First, it didn't seem to actually put a lap down and practice, I could tell, or did on like an alternate account or something like that, so they could do a kind of off the radar type thing, which is a good idea to an extent, but I just like to sell what I have too, so people know what to expect when they're around me. But whatever, to each their own on that thing. But yeah, that driver in front of me is definitely fast. I'm alright though with negotiating drafts, because I've done a whole heck of a heap of NASCAR lobbies. And NASCAR is nothing like a kart in the sense of how to drive, but really drafting is the same principle no matter what vehicle you're in. Just stay behind the lead car as long as possible, and then cut back right before you hit them, and then that way you carry as much momentum as possible. Or when you have a penalty, sort of start the same way, get as close to the car as possible, but instead of cut back, just let off the throttle and then get back on just in time to be able to stay ahead of whoever's behind you. It is pretty much blocking, but as I said, this update pretty much encourages dirty driving. Because nowadays, if there's any contact whatsoever, even if it's malicious by one driver and completely incidental by the other, both get the same penalty, so that therefore dirty drivers come out of it better. Which blocking is or isn't dirty depending on the person, but honestly with karts, blocking is sort of kind of dirty just because they're hard to drive and they're small. So if you're able to pull off a block in a kart that's so cotton picking small when really you can fit these 5 wide, then that is pretty cotton picking dirty, because there's a whole heck of a heap of sweep in there. It's one thing to block when you're in like the Ford Raptors, because you're just kind of blocking anyway because it's so big. But when you're blocking in a car, that means it's pretty cotton picking obvious. But again, you kind of have to do that now. So, I mean, if y'all want to blame me, if y'all want to risk wrecking me, go ahead, but y'all will be penalized for it. I probably will be too, but if you want to make this a demolition derby, I'm fine with it. But actually, as of now, it's pretty caught being clean. And honestly, first was somewhat blocking in a way too. Probably not as much as I was, because I think first figured out that I had a penalty because I was slowing down. But I have no idea if first has a penalty because first isn't slowing down. Rightfully so, because if I was in first, I wouldn't delete the penalty yet either. I'd just stay in first for as long as possible and see if I can run away early in the race. But for now, I'm actually in relatively good ground to start slowing down and deleting the penalty faster, because the driver behind me is pretty caught big and far back, and then them all being in a pack will probably give each other penalties. So, even though the penalty system's stupid and broken in a way that needs to be fixed immediately, but yet still hasn't somehow, if they're all just going to give themselves penalties... Oh, for Jiminy Cricket's sakes! I know I predicted the future there, I zoomed in before it happened, but that's one of the ones I remembered in particular. The car caught and pick and wrecked into me! What in the blue blazes was I supposed to do there? Again, I ain't allowed to cuss because this is going on GT Planet, but what in the factual duck is this, PD? What in the factual duck is this? I hope that's allowed, because I said it, I ain't taking that one back. Because they ain't taking the caught picking penalty back either. That car that I bet had a penalty, and that's why I wrecked. They were trying to delete it and then got pushed, which probably gave it another penalty. I know, that's not fair either. Wrecked, but then I also got a penalty for getting wrecked into. I get a penalty for getting driven into. I get a penalty for being the bump draft E. And I get a penalty when a car wrecks into me? Really? Really? This better be fixed in 1.15 or... I think it's going to be a continuous boycott. I am just going to quit racing. Because I can ignore my driver and sportsmanship rating all I want. I guarantee my sportsmanship rating will go down this race. I know this for a fact. And I've already figured out too, is unless I pretty much win a race, my driver rating doesn't go up. I ain't rolling that out because kart racing's relatively random in a way where if you're in the top 5, draft is OP enough and the penalties are inconsistent enough where you still kind of have a chance, and I'm in 3rd right now, so whatever, I could win. But I mean, still, the chances are about 1 in 5 or so, because as I said, the top 5 or so in qualifying were pretty caught and picking close. They were all within about 4 attempts faster than their qualifying time, and again, you got about 5 out of the top 10 in the region, and in karts, the times are close just because you can only do so much in karts, so... I mean, there's that factor in there too. Penalties can make it to where almost anybody has a chance of winning. I mean, still, you want to be in front, but... I still don't think a race should be decided on penalties, even if it decides that I win it. I'd still much rather have me drive to the front on my own merit than have the other cars get a penalty. But again, for how many times I've been penalized in a way that screwed me over, if the other 2 cars in front of me get an undeserved penalty and the game screws them over too, then I ain't going to feel bad about it. I'm still going to go by. It's not going to feel as good of a victory if I can just plain pass on speed, but then again, I'm also in a draft, so in theory, I actually can just plain pass on speed because I just have more momentum. Skill, speed, speed in terms of the draft, yeah, sure, but anyway, it's skill depending on how you look at it. Because, I mean, drafting still takes talent. You have to know how to do it. You have to know how to like, cut away, start turning before you actually hit the next car, because then you give them a bump and give them speed, which you don't want to do. The more skill is driving fast. I feel like more people can drive successfully than drive fastest, but yeah, there it is, still somewhat skill there. But anyway, there's also skill in deleting penalties involving the draft, and I am down to the 1 second barrier now. At one point, I think it was actually over 30 seconds, so at least I'm getting... Where's second? I don't know what that was about. That seemed like a really bad area to lead a penalty. You never want to delete a penalty on a turn just because you kind of have to slow down for a turn anyway, so it doesn't really help as much. But it seemed like second there was like trying to delete a penalty on a turn or something, so that kind of slowed second, third, and fourth down, and now I'm in fourth. I'm probably about to be on like sixth or something because I never had momentum to begin with there. And this is going to give everyone a penalty in this situation, isn't it? Why are we doing this right now? We had a nice run there to catch the leader, and then now we're just going to give each other penalties and slow each other down. Why are we doing this? As I say that, it actually worked out perfectly fine for me. I didn't actually get a penalty, and now I have a run on second, so whatever. Second was the original fastest in the region, so I'm perfectly fine with following second here. But I mean, as y'all can see, though, first, I ain't actually so sure about. And actually, I forgot. Second was actually second in the region. It's Dose that was first. Those two times are really caught and picking close. I think one of them actually ran at like a different time right at the very end, but it like wasn't enough to move up or something. But I think it was Dose who was first, and then like that guy was second, I think. I can't remember for sure. I can't remember exact names because honestly I'm recording this a good bit after it actually happened, but honestly that's just because I wanted to get the GT6 stuff done with to just finalize that game good. So anyway, now we're here, and now I'm in third. I guess it could be worse. I could have got screwed over by penalties when I was in that big pack, but I still have to delete the penalties that I have, and this ain't gonna work too good, is it? Why that driver just didn't slow down like all the rest of the people did when you blatantly see someone deleting penalties that they've been doing the whole race in pretty much the same areas they have the whole race is beyond me, but, well, whatever. That car's closer, so maybe that will actually help the drafting a little bit. Maybe? Always look on the bright side of life, but, yeah, I don't know. There's no way to tell until it happens, but actually that car is racing pretty cotton picking. Not all that good. I didn't know if that was lag or what, so I wanted to just give whatever happened there room, but actually that ended up hurting me too. Now, you know what? I bet if I would have stayed on the inside there, I would have got very slightly tapped, and I would have got like a 12-second penalty or something, so whatever. Again, that car's close, so I can use it for draft, but it does seem like I'm slowly dropping down in the pack when there's really nothing I can do about it. At least the penalty's relatively close to being away now. I mean, it's under a second, and the glitch is still in the game too, where even if you have a 0.01 second penalty when you cross the line, it counts as a second. So I'm kind of iffy on if I want to delete it all that much more anyway, because if I do end up doing it wrong in a 0.01 seconds, I'm literally going to break the game in half and burn it in a fire. But we'll see. I mean, it's still early, but there's still early, meaning there's still just that much more chance of getting more penalties as well. I'm not in a bad spot again. I pretty much have clean air. The lap cars are ghosts now. The only good thing to come from 1.13, I'm glad they didn't fix that for 1.14 because it didn't need fixing. They should have had that from the beginning. They finally actually did something well, but literally everything else about that update that involved how the racing works was terrible. Yay, new cars and all that we were expected to get anyway and all what knew about because we had the silhouette thing. Yay, we sure as the penalties will be unfair didn't see this coming. This as in this. I swear I've been deleting penalties literally since lap 1. It's lap 17, and I still have a cotton picking penalty. At this point, it is going to come down to the nitty gritty whether I delete it or not, which is a little bit scary. Because at this point, I all but have to go full throttle because fourth is right cotton picking there. And of course, I hit the wrong button. I hit it the right way or whatever, where it didn't really show more, but of course, all the things are going bad right now. Fourth is right there, so I can't really slow down. And yeah, see? There's literally nothing I can do about that. I didn't want to get penalized for the other person blocking me, but I had to slow down, or I was going to get penalized for it because I was just going to barely tap them. And now I'm about to be in 5th, ain't I? Or at the best situation 4th. At least I was able to delete the penalty, but I have a hunch. Granted, everyone around me probably had or has a penalty, but I have a hunch. All of this pack is going to get penalized at least one more time this... Holy snikes! First and second wrecked, and I might actually have a chance to win the race now. I have the best draft line on first. Third is pretty far back there. I have this much of a straightaway to be able to draft on first. It's coming down to the nitty gritty. There's 2 laps to go. I should be able to be in the lead by turn 1 with 2 laps to go. I can actually win this, folks. Holy snikes. Unexplainable. If y'all want to attempt to explain in the comments, I still don't recommend it anymore. I give up at this point. The penalty system is so broken at this point, you quite literally cannot race. I'm sorry to pause this right when the accent is big, but this killed the accent. I mean, I guarantee all of them are going to get penalties. Look at how close that racing is. Close, clean racing, side by side, 4 wide, as good as it could possibly be. With the best drivers in the region, PD thinks that deserves a penalty for all. But anyway, that ain't even the main point I'm making. The main point I'm making is other people wreck, and the people who avoid the wreck by skilled driving or luck, however it may be, the ones that avoid the wreck also get a penalty. That's not how it works in any sport whatsoever. None. Absolutely none. For example, in NASCAR, if you avoid the big one at a big track, even if you're a bad driver, you're pretty good in for a nice finish. Remember in the Daytona 500 how that 66-year-old just rode in the back the whole race and finished better than really cotton-picking good drivers who got in big wrecks in the front? That 66-year-old driver who never even made a Top Series race in his entire life, and the last time he qualified for a race was like 1992 or something, and that was for an ARCA race, finished 23rd in the Daytona 500, just sitting in the back to avoid people wrecking. They didn't penalize him whatsoever. That was a gift for him. He just rode around in the back and capitalized on other people wrecking. No penalty whatsoever. Now, good racing in the front, perfectly clean, no big wrecks. Everyone gets a penalty, and say you even do avoid the wreck as well, you also get a penalty. What in the factual duck, PD? What in the factual duck is up with your cotton-picking system? How is this right in any way, shape, or form? Back to the AXA now, because AXA at this point, I probably have the least penalty out of everybody. Y'all saw that slight bump there? That probably gave that 4 wide pack each and every one a penalty. So, in that sense it's even, but in every other sense it's about to get really chaotic really quick, I have a feeling. I deleted my penalty, but I'm also in 6th. I mean 3rd. Okay then, that went surprisingly well. I have a feeling it ain't gonna continue that way, because that's just how it works. I saved that. Actually, I knew I was going to save that, because guess what? I practiced and know how to race on my own good. I knew that wasn't going to be a wreck, but I also knew I couldn't get any closer to that driver, so I just had to take my cart flying 2 feet in the air there instead of hitting another car very slightly accidentally. Speaking of hitting another car very slightly accidentally, that driver did not do that. That was a pretty cotton-picking blatant hit there. That driver obviously saw that I had nowhere to go there. Yeah, I probably was going to get a penalty for cutting, which is kind of iffy there, because I was sort of kind of getting... Not really ran off the track at the beginning, but I was getting kind of moved over to the track, kind of escorted over to the track. And then I got downright punted. I'll go back there so y'all can actually see it more, not like me pausing in the middle of it. But that was a downright punt. I mean, at this point, whatever, there's kind of a bit of room there. That driver ain't right on the apex. I'll give him credit there. That's not downright dirty if he would have just stayed there. I probably was going to get a penalty there because there's really nothing I could have done. I could have slammed on the brakes, but at that point, that would have just realistically been a pile up. But anyway, because that driver decided to swerve into me, just look at how my car reacts, that cart reacts there. That's obvious I got swerved into. See how much, I literally got moved like 2 feet instantly. I get punted, and I get the penalty! Look! You can see when other drivers get penalties. When it's a 2-driver thing, which that obviously was. I'm the one who gets ran off the track and spun out. And I'm the only one in that situation who gets a penalty. I guess I should have slammed on the brakes going into the final lap and caused a giant pile up. Because it seems like the person who causes the wreck is not the one who gets a penalty. Granted, at that point, my best finish probably would have been 3rd, but you know what? That's better than getting ran off the track and finishing 7th or 6th, or possibly even worse, because now I have to delete this penalty. I'll say this, I'm not letting that driver win, or at least get ahead of me. I don't know what's happening with those top few, because I ain't there. Maybe they're all going to wreck each other. Maybe they're all going to give each other penalties. At least at this point, I have a clean track. But I know I ain't letting that driver by if it's the last thing I do. I don't care how much penalty I get. That driver, if I can cause it, it's going to go into the wall. I prefer to finish where I am, too. And you know what? This benefits dirty racing. I'm sorry for that driver. If you want to wreck me later, go ahead. By all means, do it. Because this penalty system encourages dirty racing. Because guess what? Now we both have even penalties. Because of course that's how it works. The person who gets swerved into also gets a penalty. I know this by now. This has screwed me over twice. So I don't mind screwing someone else over once. Because honestly, screwing over that other driver made that driver freak out to avoid getting another penalty. Which is rightfully so. But that's the driver I wanted to finish ahead of anyway. So whatever. If you want to wreck me in the future and you're watching this video, go ahead. Wreck me. I don't mind. I just wanted to screw over that driver with all of my ability. And I guess I did that. So, yay. And I want to point this out, too. This will be featured in the next happy video. That driver was coming down to the line in the lead. Look where that driver finished. Behind me, realistically, because I didn't deserve a penalty for getting wrecked. The penalty where I swerved into the other driver, sure, but the initial penalty shouldn't have happened anyway, so then I wouldn't have had to slow down and delete that, and I think I would have stayed ahead of that other driver. That driver might have got a nose ahead, but it would have been on the high side going around to that last set of corners, but I think I could have held it. But nonetheless, that was one of the most fun races I've had in a while, but penalties just downright killed that race. Again, I was probably the dirtiest driver in the race other than that driver. That driver needs to be reported pretty much. I don't know if you can actually report for just dirty driving and nothing else, but if you can, that driver needs it. Every other driver was very clean. I'm not even saying pretty cotton picking clean. They were really clean. Nobody got in a big wreck. Nobody got mad at each other. At the end of the race, really about the only angry comments was about the penalties. I said something about penalties, and then like one other driver said something about penalties. And then like 2 other drivers said that was a clean race or that was a fun race. That was a clean race. That was a fun race. But the penalties didn't care about what we think. The penalties just want to ruin everybody's race. I really do mean everybody's race. That's just unacceptable. Again, I will do a format in which is happy, where I'm just going to ignore the penalties and just show the racing as it is. Because realistically, with penalties happening, and that's just saying the penalties aren't getting deleted, the driver that finished there actually won the race. Again, everybody, literally everybody here, because it shows the red dot equals a penalty. Everybody there had to lead a penalty, so it's impossible to say who truly deserved to win. But honestly, I would say all of the top 7 sort of kind of did. We were all pretty close. We were all in that lead pack. We were all clean-ish. We were as clean as we should be, I would say. The only time I was dirty is to avoid people who were dirty with me. And I can't really say for anyone else, but honestly, it seems like I raced dirtier than everyone but that driver. So y'all can take it to each your own on how clean that is. But I guarantee it's not this cotton picking dirty, where a driver just has to slam the brakes going to the checkered flag to finish in 6th. That's just wrong in all the ways. How penalties are supposed to work, too, is they're supposed to be figured out after the race. Maybe if you blatantly cut a part of the track, I think that's something in F1, you get like a pass-through penalty. I don't watch that much F1 because I ain't on here much. But I know in NASCAR how it works is they generally don't give penalties in a race. About the only time a penalty will happen in a race is if it's like a black flag, if your car is not doing well, and that's rightfully so, because if you start going way too slow, it'll end up being a caution anyway, so it's better to just go ahead and get that car off the track before there's a caution. But anything else, it's pretty much decided after the race. And I know that's kind of hard to do for a game like this, but I feel like maybe, just maybe, it should be one of those things where the sportsmanship rating deducts and determines the penalty. I know sportsmanship rating isn't the most accurate in the world either, but at least then the amount of SR drops is at least a bit more accurate than the amount of times you get wrecked by someone else and then get a penalty. Granted, your SR drops sometimes too when you get wrecked by someone else, but almost all the time it gives you a penalty. So I feel like it should be the other way around, because I have no idea how this happened. This is beyond me, but every other driver can vouch for it too. And I have the replay itself that I can show if needed as well, if y'all don't believe me. Somehow, I think all but one of the top 8, even this driver somehow, which is kind of iffy. Granted, that driver is dirty at the very end, and I don't know about the rest of the race. But nonetheless, if I remember correctly, all but one of the top 8 had positive sportsmanship ratings. The other one came out even. Even I had a positive sportsmanship rating. And I didn't count exactly because it's kind of hard to tell, because deleting a penalty is iffy in this too. It takes a lot longer than it used to, which is stupid because they give a lot more than they used to, but that's for a different video, how to delete a penalty. I don't even know if I'm going to make that. I don't know if I have mental strength to. But nonetheless, all but one of the top 8 came out with positive sportsmanship rating, and all of the top 8 came out with at least no loss. But yet, all of the top 8 got penalties. And penalties plural, I guarantee. Because again, if it involves 2 cars, more times than not, they both get a penalty. And all the time, it's the car who gets screwed over that does as well. Literally, I've not seen one yet where I get wrecked and I don't get a penalty. Maybe I'm just unlucky with a race like this. I don't know. But I haven't seen it. And it's been proven on this replay. So you can't really deny that. But anyway, this race was fun, which in a sense is worth a yeehaw. My driver rating went down because I didn't win. That's just what happens nowadays. My sportsmanship rating somehow went up. Again, it's probably just best to ignore all that stuff, but I just can't ignore penalties. Because penalties don't ignore us. They happen. There's nothing you can do about that. I know DR and SR up and down happens as well, but that goes race by race. Penalties are one race and one race only. Penalties don't carry over to other races like driver rating and sportsmanship rating does. Penalties only affect that race itself. So it's worth bringing up in that race itself because you can't change it anymore. Whatever you finish with penalty-wise is what you have. Whatever you had to delete during the race is what you had to delete. You can't change that in the next race. if anybody's watching at this point, I very much salute you, and I thank you all, because I know I ramble